Smart. I meant to bring my water, but I don't want to cost trying to fit analysis.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to our Town Hall Public Workshop. The Town Hall Building Committee, reconstituted earlier this year with 5 new members, has been working diligently to address the questions and concerns raised by residents in the community survey done back in January and by those who voted no last November. The committee has been exploring alternative designs and locations for a new building and how best to incorporate green energy sources, and most importantly, how to best control costs. So we're going to have all of the Town Hall committee members introduce themselves, starting at the end next to Lori Smith, Town Manager.
John Dykstra. I'm on the Select Board as a rep to the committee.
April Dufo.
Mary Beth Gilbert on the Select Board as a representative to the committee.
Kevin McDonald.
John Ware.
Tim Pattison.
Judy Phillips.
Deb Bauman.
Also, not with us tonight are David Graham, who is out of town, and Richard Smith. Because we have so much information to present tonight, we ask you to please hold your questions until after the presentations. We would like to keep all questions and comments to 3 minutes or less. If we run out of time for questions to be answered, the committee will respond to all questions received after tonight's meeting. The purpose of tonight's workshop is to share what the Town Hall Committee has been focused upon based on the feedback thus far: reducing cost, downsizing, energy efficiency, and environmental impact on Kennebunkport. Tonight, we'll provide a progress report to the community and seek additional feedback based on tonight's workshop before we make any recommendations to the Select Board. No decisions have been made or will be made quickly. This will not be put into a warrant for the November election, as we need to be sure we're on the right track. We need community feedback based on what we discussed this evening. Now I'd like to introduce our presenters, Mr. Owens McCullough, Senior Vice President, Sebago Technics, and Mike Hayes, Architect with Grant Hayes.
Good evening. Again, my name is Owens McCullough, civil engineer with Sebago Technics. Mike Hayes is an architect with Grant Hayes Architects, and Mike and I were brought in to support the committee in their effort as they evaluated options and looked at the town office. Tonight, as was already presented to you by Alan, flies around, coming around. What's been done so far is really just taking the feedback that came from the community and beginning to look at options to reduce the size, the scale, the mass, how efficiencies can be gained within the building, and just to begin that process. Again, no decisions have been made yet, but we're trying to advance the conversation. Next slide, please. So really the focus of this meeting has been already stated, is just to provide an overview of the building committee's work to date, to review the project sites that have been considered and gather input from the public. We'll review some changes to the building size, the function, addressing size and cost considerations. There has been no specific costing done. We're just not even to that point yet, but we all know that if we can reduce the size and scale of the building, maybe look at some options around the site, that obviously has beneficial impacts on cost. After tonight, our potential next steps would be to refine the building and site based on comments that come out of the public, and then to begin a more substantive design process to prepare those preliminary designs and develop more specific costs We don't want to go to that point yet because we need to know where we're going to build this and generally what size of building form and shape we're going to build so that we're efficient in how we spend the town's dollars going through the design and planning process. Next slide, please. So in the past, 2023, I'm sure everybody remembers, there was a building committee that was formed to evaluate the need and options for the new town office. The support of the building committee, they retained Sebago and Grant Hayes. We worked through some options, programming assessments, looking at the size of the building, shape, configuration of the building. There was a public informational meeting that was held in October of 2023 to present the findings of that building committee. And then in November of 23, a referendum was held, but it did not pass. So today, a new building committee was formed in early 2024. We've been generally having monthly meetings over the last several months. And that building committee has been formed of public members, staff, and Board of Selectmen members. In addition, there was another study initiated during this period, which was the Village Fire Station Planning Study in anticipation of per diem firefighters. So the village where we're at here, they have challenges staffing it with people and are headed towards more of a per diem type operation. And that also has additional needs. And this building's old enough now that we needed to look at how this building functions, what sort of improvements might be needed on it, and Mike will talk to that later on in the presentation. So we wanted to look at that as part of this process. There was a town-wide survey put together, and feedback came from the public. There's questions and responses that's in the information that was provided to you. And then the new committee looked at efficiencies to reduce building size, massing, and reviewed alternative sites. And again, we looked at pretty deeply into what we needed for the town office to operate, what sort of efficiencies we could gain from how they operate, how we could squeeze down some of the spaces, maybe look at other options to move things around, and then that had an effect on the building look and the massing and the scale of the building, which Mike Hayes will talk to tonight. And then we did look at alternative sites, spent some time discussing and looking at different locations we might be able to put the town office, and the committee went through a pretty thoughtful discussion around that that took more than one meeting to go through, and then finally put together a matrix with what they felt was important attributes of selecting a site and put scores to it. And then we're here tonight to provide an update and hopefully continue the dialogue so we can work towards an eventual solution. Next slide, please. So the majority of the respondents, after we looked at all of the information that came back, kind of came down to three major areas of concern. And we've talked about those already mostly, was cost, size, and then in the other category was environmental, energy, and location. And this might be a good point to talk a little about as we go forward. Once a building size, shape, massing is identified, there'll be a lot more work to look at strategies for building either a net zero building or energy efficient strategies, high performing building envelopes. But that all comes once we have a building envelope or a building size and a mass and a site location selected. We did, however, bring in a panel of experts that met with the building committee back in, it was February when we brought them in. And that was Revision Energy. Everybody may know Revision Energy. John Dunster from Revision came in and talked to the town about energy efficiency. I will tell you that there's one thing that's happened in the last year that's been very helpful. Is it used to be communities couldn't capture tax credits, right? Because tax credits were for if somebody put a solar on their house or on their building, they could file and get a tax credit back, but it didn't apply to municipalities because municipalities didn't pay taxes. But the federal government has changed that now so that municipalities, if it's on their property, can seek that tax credit, but it comes in more the form of a rebate to the community. So we talked about that with John Dunster. We talked about roof-mounted solar, ground-mounted, different types, how that might look. So we had that conversation, and we even took it a step further and brought in Thornton Tomasetti. We brought in an energy modeling expert who spends tremendous, that's all he does, is look at buildings and high-performing building envelopes and what sort of systems and energy efficiency. And we talked about a whole wide range of things. And this meeting went on for a couple of hours just to get the committee informed of different sort of strategies. Then Allied Engineering, who will, as part of the team, they do mechanical, electrical, structural, heating, ventilation systems. We brought in their mechanical and their electrical engineer, who spent also a considerable amount of time talking through different strategies for high-performing buildings, different types of mechanical systems that can be installed to meet heating and cooling demands of the building. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about that, just so that the committee could be aware of the different strategies that are out there. Eventually, that will come into the fold once we get more refined into the building. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about within the building how we economize floor space, and Mike Hayes will have a plan here in a little bit that will take you through all of that. But the proposed 2023 town office floor plan was 12,613 square feet. We went back through the program, looked at how we can reconfigure things in the building, where we might be able to pick up flex areas, other sort of strategies to address floor space. And the revised plan is down to 10,971 square feet, about a 13% reduction. So we brought it down to just about really to the core elements and just what's necessary to operate. Then we looked at alternative sites. Basically, is there a better site out there? We looked at 5 different locations, which I'll talk through here in a little bit. And then, as I indicated earlier, we reviewed green energy options with subject matter experts, and that was Thornton Tomasetti, Allied, and Revision Energy. They will come back in at the right time, but we started just to make sure everybody had a chance to ask questions and become informed. Next slide, please. Mike, this is your cue.
Thanks, Owens. So the new design for the town hall is reduced, as previously stated, by 13% in its overall square footage. As far as the actual departments go, we were able to decrease the size of the 3 departments by 22%. So, and then the balance ended up being 13% because we went to 2 stories and we added some space for some vertical circulation. So it's got the new design, it has a reduced footprint. It allows for more flexibility in the type of construction. So this building can be built with either wood framing, steel framing, or masonry. And depending on the cost factors involved, we'll be able to decide down the road which one is going to be the best suited for both durability and cost. The spaces are, we have smaller spaces on the interior. We reduce square footages for offices and different functions. And we went to a partial 2-story design. The interior of the departments, we took an approach of more of a collaborative experience with the departments internally and the employees. So there's a lot of open space with partition systems and other types of collaborative furniture arrangements that allow them to have a space, but the space is actually much more flexible should employee counts change or functions change. Those spaces, those open spaces, can be reconfigured for new functions and for changes in staffing. So that added, it reduced the amount of overall square footage within the departments and also made them more flexible and more efficient amongst each other. The two-story portion of the building, which we'll see in a moment, is on the right-hand side, which is where all the departments are, and that's the yellow, orange, and green side. And then the left-hand side, the purple side, is more of the public spaces, the meeting spaces and the support spaces for the building in general. On the first floor, the departments are primarily planning and codes and the town clerk. There is in that, just on the outside, to the left of the green and yellow spaces is a purple space that goes front to back. That is the basically the public corridor or the public lobby, where everybody comes in, and if they're transacting with the planning department or the clerk's office, those functions are all on the right, and those are the open transaction counters for public to go up, efficiently do their business, and either exit front or rear. The spaces to the left are the public meeting room, support bathrooms, there's a breakout conference room. There's also storage on this floor for ballot equipment and other types of things that are used in the meeting space. And there's a mechanical and electrical room there too. Next slide, please. On the second floor on the right-hand side, in the blue, this is the town manager's office space. And again, you see these dashed lines in there. Those are the flex spaces. Those are the open spaces that can easily be reconfigured as functions change and grow and shrink in the future. The built rooms are the dark colored walls. Up here also is the staff break room and restroom supporting that. The yellow areas are the elevator and stairwells. We need two of those, two stairwells by code. And this floor is secured, as are the other staff spaces, the planning and codes and the clerk's offices. Those are all secured spaces also. To the left, you see a series of crisscross boxes. That's actually the roof over the public entry lobby, and those would be skylights. So that space gets a lot of daylight and seems bright and cheery. Next slide, please. So these are the exterior elevations of the proposed exterior elevations of what the new town hall would look like. So we've come up with a two-story scheme here that lends itself very closely to some traditional architectural elements you're going to find in Kennebunkport. It has more of a very, like I said, traditional coastal colonial a look to it. On the right is the two-story portion with the town functions, and we've got a covered portico out front there with some columns, so that's a place to either gather, or if you're meeting somebody there, you can gather there before you go in if it's nice, or you meet them inside. The center portion is that public lobby I spoke of that goes front to back. So it's got some glass in the front. The entrances are glassed. Kind of lends a little bit more of a contemporary flair to the building, but again, easily identified as this is the entrance. And then on the left is the large public meeting space and the other support spaces, conference rooms, and the bathrooms we previously spoke of. So that's the top right elevation would be the primary face of the building. The bottom right would be the secondary, meaning the rear or wherever, depending on the orientation. That would be the other entrance and exit. And then the drawings on the left are the sides. The one in the upper right is the two-story portion that has the town manager office up there on the second floor. So we've got a nice dormer up there, clear story windows, shed dormer, very architecturally appropriate for, again, the town. Next slide, please. All right, back to Owens.
Can't let you have all the fun, Mike. So we'll be back to talking a little more about the buildings in a few minutes, but we wanted to spend a few minutes to talk about the sites we looked at. So one site that has been a topic of conversation has been the existing town office site off Elm Street. So this property is very small, about 0.3735 acres in size, so about a third of an acre in size. Just generally looking at the building and parking and support around it, the minimum we need is really around 1.5 acres of size. So we did talk about whether this building could go vertical, multi-stories. We actually had Allied Engineering go through and look at the building. The challenge with this building is that it's 1950s construction. If we have goals of energy sustainability, it was never designed for a second floor, so structurally it would have to be significantly modified, and it would have to go up multiple floors because the footprint is only about 3,723 square foot the town office is in right now, and then there's a back garage portion. It's about 2,000 square feet. So it's much smaller than what would be needed by the programming for the building. The other challenge the committee had concerns about was parking. There's just not a lot of parking in the area, especially if you tried to have meetings there or as public comes and goes. I know staff already has concerns about the availability of parking, which seasonally gets worse. So that site was looked at both from the building and from the functional aspects of it. Next slide, please. So on the next slide, you have two additional sites that were considered. One was the police station site. That is about 6.2 acres in size. So that piece of land has appropriate size. There is wetlands, some steeper topography, some wetlands on the back side of it, and there was a lot of concern over how, if you built anything, especially towards the back, how you would access that. The site distance coming into the police station isn't great right there because of the vertical and the hill and how the other road comes into it. So there was a lot of concern around how that might play, and the fact that there was a lot of topography on that site as you go to the back, and that would add some additional cost to the project. And there's no sewer up there. And then over on the school property, we also had a fair amount of conversation on the consolidated school property. That's in the village zone. There's quite a bit of land out back on the property, but there's about a 40-foot grade change as you go up the site. And there are some wetlands and some floodplains that are associated with that property, but the topography was a major concern for everybody, so that if you put the town office up there, you would have to cut, you'd have to fill in some areas. Is there ledge we'd have to contend with? So the earthwork piece of it was more involved, and then how you, even if you did a terraced type approach to the design, that certainly adds new dynamics and cost to the project. Another topic of conversation on this site was traffic. There was a lot of concern, especially around times when the school lets out. It's in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, but there was a lot of conversation around the potential interaction and impacts of traffic in that area with town office operations and the public coming and going. The next slide, please. The next slide has the village parcel off North Street. That is certainly a large parcel, 85 acres in size. The area we were looking at, as I think folks have seen before, is a pretty small section towards the front of the North Street property that we had looked at. It has space to fit a town office in there. It doesn't have a lot of space if there was ever future growth in that area, and there is some shoreland zoning setbacks that provide some challenges with that portion of the site. We'd even talked about if we, one of the things we learned in talking with Revision, while we can do roof-mounted solar on a building, likely we wouldn't get enough roof-mounted solar to meet all the energy needs of the town office. So we would have to look at some ground-mounted solar too. And on this site, there really wasn't any space, so we'd have to go across that blue streamline over into that wooded area and use some of that for solar. Doable, but again, in thinking of the questions around cost, this site certainly is a brand new site. There's some extension of sewer and water up to the site, so that obviously adds some cost considerations. Next slide, please. Oh, no, leave it right there. I have my graphic only has one per slide. The other site that we looked at was the North Street Fire Station site where we're at here today. That's about 3.4 acres in size. Of course, the fire station and the public lot is there. There were some interesting options on how we might be able to fit a new town office on this site. The site did fall out as one of the sites that probably had the least cost for site development, water and sewers there, and we'll, as we go along, we have some concepts, to show how that might fit on that parcel. Next slide, please. Okay, so looking at those 5 sites, the committee worked collectively, and it was a conversation over a number of meetings, and to come up with what was important for the sites, each site, to find out some common factors that we should evaluate on each site, and then look at each of the sites and develop the scoring matrix that had basically red was unfavorable, green or yellow was caution, just more things to consider, and green was favorable, and we gave red a -1, we gave caution a 0, neutral, and then green was a +1. And so we went through each of the sites. So for instance, available acreage, 51 North Street was neutral. It had adequate space, but it wasn't over the top amount of space, but yet it had adequate space. Elm Street, which is the current town office, was obviously not adequate. 32 North Street, the same thing. 101 Main Street, and of course School Street had a pretty good sized parcel, so that got a 1. So we tried to go through each of these factors: future expansion, parking, traffic, accessibility, availability of utilities, natural resources, wetlands, floodplains, streams, things like that. Green energy, what the options were for energy, whether the site seemed conducive for that or not. And then we looked at site development costs. And when I say we looked at site development costs, we looked very globally at them. For instance, if we built on one site, was there likely to be more cuts and fills than another site? Would there need to be utility extensions? What was there? Would there be a longer access road that would have to be constructed into the site? So all of those played into the conversation, which fell out in this scoring matrix here. What came out of that was 2 sites that scored the highest, and that was the 51 North Street site where we're at here, and I'm sorry, the village parcel, I got that wrong. 51 is up the street, and the fire station site, which is right here. So the fire station site actually scored the highest. The village parcel scored a little bit lower, and then the others fell out much lower than those 2. So it was equal weighting and a point system to reach a consensus, and this was done by the whole group. So it was a collective effort, and it was a pretty lengthy effort with a lot of conversation. Next slide, please. So talking a little closer on the 2 sites that were ultimately considered more amenable to the development program. One is the village parcel You've seen that one before. What you see is two concepts up here that we looked at. So the access road on the right side is a little bit longer coming in with a parking lot. The purple would be the public space, the meeting space. We wanted to make sure that was towards the parking for convenience with the town activities towards the backside. And then the other option over on the left preserved that future access because we wanted to make sure we had access. Nobody knows what happens later on with the rest of the 85 acres, but we wanted to preserve that option to come into the site from that location. And it could provide a second point of access at some time in the future to the town office property. But there was conversation that as you go closer, as you go north on North Street, you kind of come up to a little bit of a crest on a curve, and then it starts to drop down gently. But up there on that location is actually pretty good sight distance, and that was brought up by a few of the committee members who spent some time out there looking at it. I went out and looked at it, and they are correct. The sight distance, it's almost right across from the crypt or the vault. Tombs, thank you. I got that wrong. I knew you'd correct me, April, thank you. Right across from the tombs. I have a hard time saying that. But that would come in through that up there and could come into the site. It had some interesting site layout. It sort of provided an opportunity to provide parking up near the public space, and then to provide additional parking maybe a little further into the site that would be for the town office functions. So we looked at those two options. Next slide, please. So you've seen this plan already. All it's showing here is it would be the same building. It's just that it would be mirrored. Mirrored so that, as I showed on the last option, one option had the public space to the north, and one option had it to the south. But it would be the same building, just in a mirrored fashion. Next slide, please. Okay. So let's talk about this site here. The committee wanted to look at how the town office might fit on this parcel. So what you see down on the right side is the existing fire station with the fire apron. And then next to it would be in sort of I guess it's sort of a teal color, ties into the green area, which would be the new town office. So there would be a connection between the fire station and the new town office. There would be some parking up front on the town office. It preserves parking in the public parking, the bulk of it in that lot. And then we were proposing a staff-only parking of 20 spaces in the back with 2 additional spaces for first responders. It would be for town office and first responders, it would be a one-way circulation around the site. And then the primary parking would be integrated into the main parking lot. A couple things on this site. It has the advantage of using some of the existing grounds that have already been developed. It provides connectivity between the town office and the fire station. And the site development area is reduced by about 40% from what we would have to do, say, at the village parcel or another green site. So it had some ability to save some of those costs in this location. Parking, so the existing parking is 100 spaces. That's the public side of it. The existing first responders is 6 spaces. The expanded first responders would add 2 additional spaces on the back for them. And then the new parking, the 20 spaces for the public and the parking in front of the building would provide for 26 spaces. So that would be the North Street Fire Station layout. Next slide, please. Mike, you're back up to talk about how they integrate in with each other.
Thanks, Owens. So this particular plan shows as Owens had previously indicated. On the right-hand side, shaded in gray, is this existing fire station. And then 24 feet away would be the area shaded in the light green, which would be the potential new municipal office building. The connector is the blue piece that you see in between. There's roughly 24 feet of separation between the new municipal offices and the existing fire station in this design. And that's in order to address what could be the future needs of this fire station when it goes to per diem. The elevation you see down below is, on the right again, is the existing fire station. You see that little connector in between them, and again, the municipal office design on the left. This particular plan shows it flipped from the previous version you saw with the municipal offices, the two-story portion on the far left of the new building, and then the public meeting spaces and restrooms and other support on the right-hand side. And that layout helps to double up on that meeting space and allows the fire department to utilize that space for training purposes. So you're getting a 2-for-1 in this design. Makes it a much more efficient use of both buildings. So that was the reason, the primary reason for flipping the plan. Also, the new parking spaces that Owen mentioned on the left-hand side of the town hall addition would be closer to the offices in which most people are coming to transact business. I think that's pretty much the summary for this layout. Next slide, please. So this is what the second floor would look like. Pretty much all the existing roofs on the right are the fire station. The little connector, as you can see in between, and then the flipped plan for the second floor of the municipal offices on the left, where the town manager would be up on that side of the building. And those clerestory windows that we talked about and that shed dormer would be looking out over the parking and the people coming and going. Next slide, please. So then as we were asked to do a study of the existing fire station and what its programming needs would be when it does go to a per diem operation. It turns out that we came up with a new truck bay is needed in order to take care of all the apparatus. There would be 4 double occupancy bunk rooms that would need to be taken care of the per diem firefighters. And we convert some of the existing interior spaces for those other supports that the per diem folks need. Day room, laundry, showers, bathrooms, those kind of things. The blue areas you see around the gray of the existing fire station would be the additions that would be needed to this building in order to accommodate its future. And that 24-foot separation that I spoke of before between the existing fire station and the new town hall, that's where the bunk rooms are, the changing shower bathrooms, and the laundry area are for the per diem. We've also maintained that connection between the existing town hall, or what would be the existing town hall possibly at that point, and the new fire station through that addition so that it continues to facilitate the co-use of that large public meeting space by both entities. Next slide, please.
That gets us to the end of our presentation. I was pretty close to my 30 minutes. I ran over just a little bit. But the next step is we're just going to welcome your comments and thoughts. Once we get that comment, the group's going to meet again to go through the public comment. If eventually hope to make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen on the site preference, and then hopefully the committee would continue to refine the building design and cost. And Alan, did you want to add anything? Are you going to moderate the public, or?
Just wanted to thank you and Mike for your presentation and the fine effort putting this together for us. We now have a question and answer period, so if you have a question, please raise your hand. I know we have people at home as well, so we'll open the floor up to questions, and you don't have to get up like you normally do in a meeting. Nina is going to bring the mic to you. Please stand and say your name and ask your questions, and you can direct it to Mike, to Owens, or anyone on the committee.
One.
Please
Thank you.
stand. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Messer. First, I'd like to thank you all for all the work you've done. It's very impressive. One question I had is the roof over the meeting room, the proposed meeting room, is that a cathedral ceiling?
Mike? Come up, Mike. Why don't you guys come up here, that way?
You have to go up.
Okay, sorry. I don't have my reading glasses with me, so I wasn't able to,
I can't go anywhere without them.
you're right.
No, there's one in every room. That's not a cathedral ceiling.
Okay.
So,
From the elevation, it looked like it was higher than, as high as the other side where the town manager's office is.
yep, so at this point, the design includes roof pitches that are very traditional. So that is basically an attic space.
Okay.
But all the insulation that we need to keep the heat into the meeting area will be down at that
Okay.
ceiling line.
And along with not having my reading glasses, how would the meeting room compare to this room as far as size? I know this one's being carved up or something,
Right, so this.
possibly, but how does it, I couldn't see the square footage.
Right. So the new meeting room would accommodate 100 seats, plus,
So compared to this room, is like twice as big,
I think it's 3 times.
3 times as big? Okay.
Pardon me. Okay. Can you pass that along to someone else? Please. Thank you.
I don't think it's 3 times as big, is it?
That sounds too big.
Yeah.
I don't think so either.
Kai Leffler. I'd like to know where the kitchen is. Our Rotary Club now meets here on Tuesday mornings. We have a light lunch, but the fire department has fundraisers and lunches and things that require kitchen use. And I just wonder, where is that, or is there going to be one we can still use?
The existing kitchen here in this fire station will stay as is. We're retrofitting it, pardon me, I'm dry. We are renovating that kitchen because it's got a lot of things that don't quite work well right now. So, but that kitchen will remain functional and usable.
And you could still access it through this walkway.
Correct. There'll be access through the rear, pardon me, and you'll be able to access it through this way too.
I see.
This will become offices,
Right,
but there's a corridor that goes through there.
I see. Thank you.
Yep.
Next question?
I'm just wondering, so is there an elevator in this building also that brings you to the second floor for handicap accessibility?
The new municipal office design
Yes.
does have an elevator, yes, for ADA.
Okay, yeah. And anything with solar with that? Is there any consideration for solar power?
So one of the next steps, depending on whether people like this direction or not, would be to take the design a bit further and then start engaging Revision Energy and Thornton Tomasetti for looking at all those things, solar design, insulation thicknesses, all kinds of other systems that would make the building more efficient and green.
Yeah. It just seems like this site design, the actual topography of it suits, we have an existing topography here that's ready to go almost. It seems, I mean, just from apparently, that's
Yep.
my comment
You
on
want to add
that.
to that? I know you do.
Thank you.
Well, the only thing I want to add is, I agree that that was one of the appealing attributes of this site.
And it also worth mentioning that the roof design, going to a more traditional look, also is more accommodating to solar panels.
It is.
Than the first design.
And the location, the direction of the site too, or the building on the site, right? Those were two pluses for the solar side.
Yes, more roof area and better orientation.
Gotta use these mics. Gotta use these
So what Mike said is the orientation of the roofs, the configuration is better suited for solar on the site. It has very good orientation for solar. I will say that, you know, we need to have that more, if the site was looked at, we would engage revision, our energy folks to look at it more closely. We're likely going to have, if we wanted to have 100% coverage, we would likely have to have ground-mounted solar also someplace. Likely cannot achieve it just simply on the roof. But this has a lot of opportunity for roof, too.
Next question?
And the
Please
existing,
stand.
yeah, the existing, Kathleen Canarum, the existing parking lot could be a good place to put those solar panels rather than cutting down more trees to put solar panels in the other site, so. And could you remind me real quick, what was the size of the previous town hall compared to this one?
So the existing town hall was,
The previous design was 12,000.
Or no, I mean the existing town hall, I should have said, not
yeah,
previous,
because I
sorry,
had that
existing.
on Elm Street, because I wish I walked around with everything. So
That's all right.
so the occupied area that's used by staff right now is 3,723 square feet. And then there was about 2,000 square feet of garage area
Garage.
out back.
So 3,000, 3 times bigger,
Yeah.
okay.
But it includes the meeting.
It includes the
Yes.
meeting room, which is not,
Yeah, Wayne Burbank. I know there's been a lot of work done on this, and it sounds to me, it looks to me, looking at this really quickly, that this might be the best site of all the sites. And especially you don't have to build a big parking lot, it's already out there, and the sewer is here, and you just connect onto this building. But is there any, you know, you're reducing the size that was, that you originally wanted by 13%, but is there anything that says how much the price of the thing might drop? Has there been any consideration on that?
We're just not there yet. There's just that would be one of the next steps. If we all generally like this location, then we would advance it to the next step and start having those conversations on what the type of building construction is, looking at the energy modeling of it, and begin to put together those sort of costs. That would be the next step, and we would come back to you with those costs.
Good, good, thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Badger Davis. I own the property that you're moving towards. My parents built their house there before this was all here. We've had to move our fence twice, about 10 feet each, to have usable property because it's so wet. The front part that abuts North Street is, we would never be able to build on it at the current standards because it is now wet. It never used to be wet. My question is and I appreciate all the work you've done. I know it's a very controversial issue. What plans are there for drainage? This neighborhood has extreme drainage issues and flooding issues. I can't speak for other neighbors, but only my concerns. And you're moving more right abutting my property, and I'm wondering what your plan is for runoff and drainage for the whole neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Drainage has been a conversation at the committee, fairly in-depth, and this might be something where Lori has to jump in and help me, but I believe that the town engineer in the town has been looking at options to address drainage that currently exists, which would obviously help with our project. A few years ago, the town put a drainage system in North Street in front of the site. We would look at that as an option. It's pretty shallow, but we would look at options to see if we could send some of it that way. But I think what you're referring to, because I've walked that, and I appreciate what you're saying. And I think Lori has been working with Eric LaBelle, the town's engineer, and they're exploring options to address some of that drainage. I don't know what those are, but I do know that they are looking at them. Is that fair, Lori?
That is fair. We are looking at what options, we're trying to do some more analysis of the water table here as well. But I think in the Town Hall Building Committee meetings, they also emphasize that the development of the site could, also needs to address drainage. And so it's a combined approach.
Correct.
Anyone at home have questions?
Well,
We have 3 hands raised.
Well, let's start.
I'm Nina Perlmutter.
I'm going to start at home first. Nina.
Okay.
Sorry.
Melinda, you can speak.
Yes, hi. This is Melinda Anderson. I appreciate all the work that's been done, and I think this does seem to be a better feel and a better spot for the new town hall. I would like to say, I would like to see solar put into the design, and I did just hear, you know, your explanations, and I know it will go further, but that would be my input to that. As I say, I appreciate all the work you guys have done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one.
Next, we have Charles Simmons. One moment.
Charles?
Charles, you can speak.
Okay, so I appreciate the work that you've done on this, Owens and Mike, and I appreciate the presentation. The only thought that came to mind was, did you want to consider an expanded parking area dedicated to the tour buses that come in? You know, maybe you could think about having an expanded parking lot where they could park, you know, away from the town center, and then have a shuttle or just a short walking distance into town. But that might improve some of the road, some of the traffic congestion. It's just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Doesn't allow it.
And next, we have Robin.
Hello, Robin.
Yes, hello. I would just like to say I appreciate your expanded view of this project. I still think it's large, but a larger concern to me is that the town hall lost by 122 votes, and I don't recall any citizens' initiatives to bring this back. Could you please describe what the mechanism that keeps this on the table was for this? I mean, did people just say, well, we don't care if they said no? Like, it just seems, I haven't heard any speaking about that. I do think this fire station is a better design without having to cut down trees or build a big parking lot, but I still, like in our town, usually when, or our country, when there's a no vote, you don't just roll on and try to get to a yes vote without people really calling for that. So I just would like to know, was it the last head of the board? Who decided that we should go ahead with this, and how many attempts would we do if it keeps coming to no because of cost and our, you know, we have a balloon payment on the village parcel and education and trash and, you know, the taxes seem like they would go up on a large project like this. So that was the number one concern. So I'm just wondering how you went from no to just rolling along and designing something new, although I think it's far superior what you've done. So thank you for that.
So Robin, back in January, we did a community survey.
Yep.
And of the people who responded to that, about 57% of the people said they voted no. Upon that answer, we then based a question: how many people feel that we still need, that we need a new town hall? And the answer there was 57%. So we were buoyed on by the fact that even the people that voted no, the vast majority of them said, we need a new town hall. But we also went deeper and asked for what was wrong. Why did you vote no? The largest percentage of people was cost. The second largest was size. And then you trickle down with much smaller percentages on the other questions. However, it did seem like, even though the percent of actual respondents was rather small, I think it was probably around 15% of the total people who voted. It was enough when we realized that the people who were responding were people that had voted no.
Okay.
Anyone want to?
So we have the large survey in the fall, right, about why people, that was a separate survey because that was last fall, correct? So then you did another survey that had a much smaller responding population, is that so?
The community survey was done in January, 2 months after the election.
Oh, okay, so it seems sooner than that, so, okay, well, that's interesting. It just seems like, when people say no, it should mean no in democracy, but I do understand because, at least it got us to a place where there are more palatable options, and I think the building's more attractive. So, thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, Robin. I think we had a question here.
I'm Nina Perlmutter. I live right down on Lock Street. I'd like to bring up several issues. First, I'd like to say the town does need a new town hall. I work with several committees here, and I think we really are in a bind with space and with offices, and it's really not fair to the people who work in the present town hall the way they're crowded in there. Second, the first issue I'd like to bring up on this is you're talking about the village fire station and expanding the area there. I know from talking to my neighbors in this area, and it's just a U that you go around from Lock to Oak to West Street to get out to North Street, that this is the oldest neighborhood in Kennebunkport. North Street traffic is unbelievable in the summer with tourists and with buses, even in the fall. And I've brought this up before. The neighborhood allowed the parking lot to go in there next to the fire station when the property was there. One of the things they specified was no tour buses, okay, for the exhaust. We still have problems with people trying to park trailers there. There are serious drainage problems there. One of them came up when somebody was expanding into the wetlands this spring. There's been serious flooding in there, and if you go into the field next to the fire station where all the poison ivy grows, I think you'll find that you have some serious drainage issues. And the neighborhood is going to be concerned about whether they can get out of Lock Street or West Street when the traffic is increased even more. I don't think you've done a traffic study to see how much that would be increased, have you?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, well, that's one of the big issues. If you're going to put something in North Street, and I've pointed this out before, it would be much better to use the village parcel, and even though you have to bring in sewer and water, it would be much easier if you put that town hall in between School Street and Lock Street to ameliorate some of the traffic. The second issue I'd like to bring up is a question. Have you done anything about bird strikes in this building? I see an atrium, I see a lot of glass. Have you even considered bird strikes? Because you're going into wooded areas, and Kennebunkport considers itself a town in the trees, basically, and I work with the Shade Tree Committee. We've lost a lot of birds. 70% of the birds in this country are gone. And a lot of that is municipal building and residential building bird strikes. That's why we ask people to put their lights out during migration areas, migration times especially. So what have you done with these windows to ameliorate bird strikes? Audubon has guidelines, New York City has guidelines, loads of municipal buildings around here have put in new buildings and taken into account bird strikes with overhangs. It doesn't increase the costs, you just have to design around it. We're not asking you to put in bird-friendly window glass, but there are an awful lot of things you can do to keep down bird strikes. So what have you done?
Thank you, Nina. Those are all important considerations, and those will all be looked at as we go along. But I'm the biggest birder in the county, I think, so I'm very concerned about it. You should come by and see my 14 feeders in my lawn.
Okay.
And not all birds are feeder birds, but I really enjoy them, and it hurts me every time one of them runs into one of my windows, and we've done certain things to try to prevent it. But that is a very important issue for a municipal building. I'm sure we'll look deeply at that.
And one other point, this has already been brought up. You don't have to put solar panels on the ground. There are lots of places where they're taking parking lots, putting up columns and putting the solar panels over that. One, it cuts down on the plowing because the snow doesn't get in there as easily. And two, shades cars and keeps them cool during the summer and keeps them dry during rainstorms. So any parking lot that you put in should take into consideration putting the solar panels over the parking lot.
We began that discussion, but again, that's one of the things that once we have a site, then it's all different depending on which site you pick. So those will be considerations for sure to get the best energy savings and best application of toward our Kennebunkport environment.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Alan Lamb. There's an assumption here that all of the town offices will be in one location. And I seem to recall at a prior meeting where someone had suggested that perhaps that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So my first question is, was it considered perhaps moving some of the offices separately? And related to that, what happens to the old town hall if we do this project?
Lori, could you respond to that, please?
Sure. The committee did look at the possibility of splitting up offices at Town Hall and looked at the collaboration that occurs between those uses. There were members who did a tour of all the other municipal facilities we have to see if there was any room in any of those buildings to accommodate some of the offices. I think what they determined was that because the cost to add on to another building somewhere else or to build new or to renovate the current building, we wouldn't really be saving costs, and that it made more sense to keep those offices together if possible. In terms of the current building, that would be up to the town. It's a town property. There was discussion about selling that to help offset the costs of the new town hall, but that hasn't been decided. That would need to be voted upon.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill Case. Two issues Nita brought up. One, we have a home in Naples, Florida, and talking about parking and solar panels above it. Many of the locations down there have EV chargers connected with, I don't know if there's an EV charger in the town of Kennebunkport, is there?
Right here.
One right here.
One right here, one right here.
Right in the hotels, yeah.
And we've got a whole parking lot that could be done. But I think my biggest issue in having been involved in a lot of real estate developing in town and talking with builders and everything like that, one of the biggest obstacles, and Nita brought it up again, is the parking and traffic. Getting a pickup truck down here sometimes with a trailer, and especially in the current town office, finding a place to park getting through all the traffic, and I don't know what the percentage of use is as far as traffic into the town hall, but I would imagine code enforcement and planning must be a large percentage of that traffic. And I've talked to Tim Spang and Jeff Bowley and Don Coburn, and they would all love to see code enforcement put in a different location. And the most logical location, as far as they were concerned, was the site where the police station is. It's accessible. If there's going to be growth, it's almost all going to be out at that part of town. And to have to come all the way in from the Goose Rocks Beach area into town to get a permit and to talk to planning and everything is a real challenge for these people, especially in the summertime when you can't find a place to park anyway and you got to fight all the traffic. So those are my two issues.
Thank you.
Laurie Willett. This is a much nicer design, I think, than the previous one. I remember, so I like this design better than the previous one. I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. Remember from the tour of the existing town hall that one of the big issues was storage of important documents, and I'm wondering where those are stored in this plan. I'm also wondering, no offense, why so much space for the town manager office above? And then when it comes to voting on what happens with the existing town hall, is that a ballot vote or is that a town hall meeting, or how would that work?
I'm going to deal with the first two questions.
So as far as the storage of record documents and archival documents, the new design has a vault that is much larger than the existing, and that vault would be where all of those documents would be stored. There is also a bulk storage room that's on the back side of the building. Let's see, if you were looking at the green portion, the top part has two rooms. One room is the mechanical utility room. The bigger room is the bulk storage room. So non-essential items would be stored in there, meaning non-archival record type items. There's certain things that need to be in a vault by law, and then other things, larger pieces of equipment, the voting booths, those kind of things, voting machines, those could be kept in that other room, which is locked and secured storage also. The second question was the size of the town manager's office?
Yeah, maybe put up the second floor.
I think it's because you refer to it as the town manager's office, when it includes finance and HR and IT too.
Yep, exactly. So the box on the right, the blue box on the right, actually identifies all of the spaces that are on that upper floor. So it's not just Lori, she doesn't get a kingdom up there all to herself. So yeah, she has the little box. That's the little one, yeah. So there's all those other functions, and there's also the staff break room and restrooms.
And Lori had a question about voting. Can you address how the voting will take place and where things are stored, et cetera?
Yeah, so the plan would be to have election day voting happening in the meeting room, similar to how it is now. The challenge is that we've really run out of room, and even in this meeting room, with holding elections. But the town meeting portion, I think the plan is still to do it at the school. I guess that would be a decision for the board at some point. I think it depends on how many people they expect to be there. So they could hold it in either location.
Was that the question, or was it, I think it was the sale, sorry.
I appreciate that, knowing that, but my question was about voting on what happens with the existing town hall.
Yeah.
How would that work? And just to say, I remember in terms of storage at the existing location, there's all kinds of like toilet paper and hand soap and all kinds of stuff for the public bathrooms, like at the port. And it just made me think about other storage things that might be able to happen at the existing site as opposed to in the new site for non-essential things, that's all. But I'd be curious to know about how the vote would happen.
So the board would bring forward a warrant question, and so it would either ask the town whether they wanted to sell it or whatever they wanted to do. They would bring forward a question, and that's how that vote would happen.
So it would happen at the town,
It's up to the board. The selectmen set the warrant, so it depends on what they choose.
So
Both are
ca-
viable.
Yeah, can we talk about what happened at the last election, like how it was set up? So on the ballot at the last election, it included, the question for the town hall on the last election included the sale of the existing town hall also as part of that one yes or no vote, right? Right. So then what Lori's saying is for the next ballot, whenever we're getting ready to go to ballot, then the select board would decide on the warrant of how that would be delineated. Would it all be one vote again? Would it be separate? But that's how it's happened in the past.
It would also be decided whether it was on the ballot or whether it was a town meeting. Both are a viable way to pass, and it's decided at the time that the warrant is executed as to how that will occur.
Okay, so that decision is made by the board.
That's correct.
Thank you, Lori. Anyone else online with a question?
No hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions?
Hi, it's Todd Marola. I'd like to address a question.
Tom, can you hold it up
Hold
close,
the mic up
please?
a bit.
How's that?
Closer.
No.
Closer? Okay.
That's it.
That's good.
Thank
Thank you. I'd like to direct a question to the design committee, largely. I'm aware of the health department being very short on space in itself. And I'm wondering if that is one more thing that the committee should consider in terms of how that's going to be addressed. If the existing space, for instance, is combined with the, thank you, with the police department taking over the entire building, is there any chance of accommodating space for the health department, adequate space for the health department?
That's something we'll look at.
Okay. Thank you.
Obviously, it hasn't been included in this iteration, but it is something we should look at. Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone on the town hall committee have any comments? You guys have done a lot of work in the last 8 months. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening, participating in our citizens workshop. Appreciate all your feedback, your comments, and now we really have to get to work to begin to put in place what we're going to recommend. Thank you very much.